What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video we're talking about the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4. Brooks has done something pretty good with this shoe, and I'm going to go so far as to say that this is my favorite Brooks shoe ever. Let's get into it. Alright my friends, you know the drill. Let's get this video started with some disclosures. This video is brought to you in partnership with my friends over at Roadrunner Sports. They were good enough to send me a pair of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 will cost you $250, and of course I will provide links in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. But before we get into all the details about the Hyperion Elite 4, I just want to say a bit about how this shoe looks, because even though it sounds quite shallow, I think this shoe is absolutely gorgeous. And did that influence my decision going in? Maybe. But what also influenced my decision going in was the regular Hyperion, and I thought that was just a little too firm for my liking. So yes, I did have both a positive expectation based on the looks, which is nothing, and a negative expectation based on my experience with a different shoe, which is also nothing. Luckily, I've been able to run quite a bit in the Hyperion Elite 4, and I've been able to form some opinions based on that, not based on nothing. What has remained the same is that I still think this shoe is absolutely gorgeous. Okay, enough of that. We have 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. For me, at least in a marathon racer, an 8mm drop is right in that sweet spot. It just feels really good to me. Now, Brooks claims that in a US men's size 9, the Hyperion Elite 4 will tip the scale at 7.8 ounces or 221.1 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 9.2 ounces or 260 grams. Guys, it's a light shoe. So just a bit about fit. The Hyperion Elite 4 does fit true to size. It fits me very similar to every other Brooks shoe that I wear. However, in terms of comparison to other race day shoes, I found we do have quite a bit of room in the forefoot, which was really nice. But even though I felt there was a little more room than other comparable shoes in the forefoot, it still is a mission to get on. Like every other race day shoe with this type of upper that isn't really pliable, you have to really undo the laces and kind of wiggle in your foot and then pull up on this heel pull to get your foot seated in the shoe as it should be. That's not really a complaint. I guess it's part and parcel with race day shoes. But as we do, let's get started at the top. Let's work our way down. The immediate top of the heel collar is very thin, and then there is a bolster coming around from about here all the way around the heel to that same position on the other side. In fact, you can see it right here. It's orange, and that's where the padding starts, and it does come all the way around the back. There is a very thin heel counter. In fact, if I squeeze it like this, you can really see how thin it is, and it's fairly rigid. Well, it's not totally rigid, but it's a lot more rigid than other shoes that don't have a heel counter. And I think if I had my choice, I would always have some little bit of rigidity in the back because it just feels a little more secure than when we don't have it. But also, if I'm totally honest, when shoes don't have it, it doesn't really affect me negatively. Like, yes, my ankle feels a little loose in the back, but it doesn't actually slip. But with the Hyperion Elite 4, there was no heel movement whatsoever. Let's talk about this upper for a second. And I'm not going to gush anymore about how good I think this shoe looks, but maybe for just a second more. I think the beauty of this shoe is in the upper. It's a very breathable, very airy knit upper, and the weave on it is just super wide in some places. Can you see that? I mean, even in the places where the weave is a little tighter, it's not tight at all. It's almost like a screen in a window. I can see directly inside the shoe. The tongue is super thin, as we would expect. There is a little bit of padding right here in the center towards the top of the tongue. We have a lace loop right here in the middle, and then the tongue is attached to the inside of the eyelet chain on the medial side. It is open on the lateral side. So yes, this tongue is very thin, and you do have to make sure that tongue is seated correctly on top of your foot, but I really didn't find it to be anything of an issue. And of course, with the tongue attached to the upper, there was no slip at all. The laces are absolutely superb. Brooks is using a serrated edge lace, and that just gives me a lot of bow security. You know, when I tie the bow, I don't want to worry about it coming untied, even if I do double knot it, which I always do. If laces are too smooth or too silky, sometimes they can come untied. There is no danger of these laces coming untied. The serrated edges just take care of business. As far as underlays and overlays go, we got some underlays coming around the toe box just to keep it off your foot. The Brooks logo provides a little bit of support to the upper, just keeping it upright. Got some reinforcement around the heel. I mean, it's still super soft, but it's just keeping that structure of the shoe intact. And then we got some reinforcement right along the eyelet chain. There is an additional hole in case you want to do the lace lock. And as far as the upper goes, that's pretty much it. It's a thing of beauty. Coming down to the midsole. Now, Brooks has done a pretty good job, in my opinion, with this midsole. But I understand why they are going to get some criticism. But with the Hyperion Elite 4, Brooks has upgraded the midsole to DNA Flash V2. It's a nitrogen injected midsole. And I suppose the only criticism is that it's not PEBA. But I want you to hold your your conclusions on that. I don't want you to look too deeply into other people talking down about the midsole foam in this shoe, because I found it performed extremely well. Now, sandwiched in between this DNA Flash V2 is a 3D printed Speed Vault Race Plus plate. And if I hold it up, you can see on the bottom kind of the shape of the plate, but I've actually got some good footage from when I visited the Hyperion house in Orlando for the trials of the Hyperion Elite all deconstructed, and you can really see the pattern of that plate. Obviously, Brooks is saving a lot of weight by having a plate look like that, and it is very rigid. It's extremely rigid, which actually is what we want in a race day shoe. That rigidity is going to be your best friend when you're picking up the pace. Just briefly taking a look at the outsole rubber, we have quite a bit of outsole rubber with a lot of cutouts. It's kind of in a similar pattern to that plate. And then we got a little bit of outsole rubber here on the heel, just strategically placed. The rubber on my pair is actually looking extremely good, but I am seeing a little bit of wear on the midsole material right here. And that's only because I am a heel striker. Especially when I'm running slow, I do tend to land heel first. So that wear on the midsole is not surprising, but as far as the rubber goes, it's holding up extremely well. I'm actually surprised how clean the bottom of this shoe looks. I didn't have to wash it before making this video. Now, as far as traction on wet surfaces go, I can't really say that I had much experience. It didn't rain at all during my testing of this shoe, but there's a lot of sprinklers watering the grass around here, and those sprinklers get the roads quite wet. So when I was running on the wet parts of the road, I would try and scuff my feet, and I can't really say I noticed anything slippery. The shoes worked well for me in the very small parts of wet pavement that I ran on. Okay, so let's talk about the ride. And this is where I want you to keep an open mind, because I did say that this shoe was my favorite Brooks shoe of all time, and that's not exactly fair, because it is a race day shoe. The pinnacle of R&D has gone into this shoe, but I really like it. I also like the Hyperion Max. But this shoe feels good. Now, it doesn't feel good as in really soft, the way some other marathon races feel, and I'm specifically thinking of the Vaporfly 3, the Wave Rebellion Pro 2, even the Cielo X1 is quite a bit softer than this. However, the Hyperion Elite 4 is softer than the Cloudboom Echo 3. It is way softer than the Brooks Hyperion, even though that isn't a race day shoe. In fact, as I was running in it, the shoe that I thought that this compared to as far as feel underfoot, we're not going to get too deep into this, but I just want to give you a quick glimpse. Something like that. That is what it reminded me of. Now, that shoe has been a much loved shoe, and the feeling of running hard in the Hyperion Elite 4 was much like that. Maybe not quite as responsive, but the feeling of firmness and propulsion underfoot was very similar. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you've probably heard me say that I like soft shoes, especially when I'm running in a marathon. I prefer something with a bit of cushion that's going to give me protection in the later miles. I've tested several marathon race day shoes that I just don't think would work for me at that long of a distance, the half marathon all day. But I bring up that to say that the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 would work great for me at the marathon distance. There was nothing about any of my test runs where I thought that I wouldn't feel protected with the amount of cushioning that's in the Hyperion Elite 4. Yes, it is on the firmer end of the spectrum when compared to its cohorts, but I think Brooks has struck a nice balance with that DNA Flash V2. It's firm, but not too firm. Now, here's what I found in my testing. So usually, again, if you've been watching this, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but usually when I go out and I run a tempo run or I run intervals, I don't separate my run into the different components of the run. I will warm up, then I will go into the workout, and then I will cool down. So I found that when I am running at slower paces, the Hyperion Elite 4 feels quite firm. But when I start picking up the pace, when I start landing a little more midfoot, when I start loading the plate a little more, that feeling of firmness completely went away. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the Hyperion Elite 4, when I was running hard, felt snappy and propulsive. Now, with that said, when I did slow down, so in my rest periods and when I was cooling down especially because the shoe felt so good at speed that when I slowed down, it was really noticeable how firm the midsole felt. That I think perhaps if someone is going out and they're only running easy in this shoe, I think maybe it's going to feel a little firm, maybe not that propulsive, but this shoe, as it is designed for, does excel at faster paces. And when you do start loading that plate and you allow the shoe to do the work, well, you're doing the work, but when you allow the shoe to help you do that work, you can feel the assistance from the plate, from the foam, and everything works together well. Of course, that isn't just the plate, that isn't just the foam. Brooks is also using their rapid roll technology, and if I hold it up like that, you can see the geometry. Got a nice big heel bevel, beautiful toe spring, and the transitions in the Hyperion Elite 4 were quick and smooth. To me, there was nothing that felt clunky about this shoe. Now, if you are watching this review and you're thinking, Matt, you're gushing about this shoe, I've seen some other reviews that are not quite as positive. I want to remind you to take all these reviews with a pinch of salt, and that's because with different running mechanics, with the weight of me, I am going to interpret this shoe differently differently than someone else may. In my case, I am 6'7", I weigh 185 pounds, which is pretty heavy, so I am able to load this shoe nicely. Because I have that extra weight that is loading the shoe, it's possible that this has given me a little more of an advantage, or it's letting me take advantage of everything that Brooks has put into this shoe. Perhaps it wouldn't work as good with a lighter runner. I don't know. You're gonna have to find out for yourself. But for me, the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 has been a very pleasant surprise. As far as the price goes, $250, I don't even think it's worth me commenting on it. This is Brooks' top of the line race day shoe. I think they'd be leaving money on the table if they didn't charge $250. However, as we all know, $250 is a lot of money. But I'd like to know your thoughts. I'd really like to know your thoughts if you have run in the Hyperion Elite 4, maybe if you've demoed it or you've bought a pair already. And if you haven't bought a pair of the Hyperion Elite 4, what is your race day shoe of choice? Oh, I should also add that I think this shoe would work just as well for the 5K all the way up to the marathon. I know there are some shoes that kind of I can shrink that gap just a little bit, but for me, I think this shoe would perform well at all distances. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.